I thought helping my boyfriend call out of work was what supportive partners did. By the fifth Friday, I realized I wasn't supporting him at all. I was helping him lie. My name is Claire Whitmore. I'm 28 years old, and I work in IT support for a mid-sized logistics company. It is not glamorous work. Most of my day is spent troubleshooting servers, resetting passwords, and listening to people describe computer problems like their laptops woke up that morning with personal grudges. But the job is stable, the benefits are decent, and every morning, whether I feel amazing or exhausted, I show up. That detail matters. My boyfriend, now ex-boyfriend, worked as a junior recruiter at a staffing agency. Decent pay, decent title. Nothing life-changing, but solid enough for someone still building his career. He had been there about a year and a half when everything started quietly cracking open. He liked having a job. He liked telling people he had a job. He liked the paycheck, the social image, the LinkedIn-friendly version of adulthood. What he hated was the structure. More specifically, he hated Fridays. Not in the normal, I can't wait for the weekend way. In the, I physically cannot bring myself to work on the last day of the week way. The first time it happened, we had only been together about 2 months. I was getting ready for work when my phone buzzed. His text said, "Babe, I'm really not feeling it today. Can you call my boss and tell her I woke up with a stomach bug? I don't want to fake the voice myself." I remember standing there with one shoe on, staring at the screen. It felt weird, but not alarming enough to become a fight. People have bad mornings. People get overwhelmed. And in the beginning of a relationship, you want to believe every request is a chance to prove you're loving. So I called. I told his manager he was under the weather and wouldn't be in. She said, "No problem. Thanks for letting us know." That was it. He sent me a heart emoji and wrote, "You're the best." And I let myself feel needed. The second time was 3 weeks later. Same setup. Friday morning. Same soft panic in his text. "Taking a mental health day. Can you call for me?" I did it again. But that time, something felt different. He was too casual. The message came at 8:45, which meant he had already decided not to go before even getting out of bed. Still, I didn't push. I told myself support sometimes means not interrogating someone when they say they're struggling. By the third Friday, I started paying attention. He texted, "I literally cannot today. My anxiety is so bad. Can you please call and say I have a migraine?" That was when I noticed the pattern. Stomach bug, mental health day, migraine, not feeling well. He was rotating excuses like a playlist on shuffle. I called again, but afterward I asked him gently, "Are you okay? This is the third Friday you've missed. If you're really struggling, maybe you should talk to someone." He said, "I am talking to someone." I asked, "Who?" He said, "You, and you're supposed to support me." That answer sat wrongs in my chest, but I ignored it, because sometimes when you love someone, you mistake being used for being trusted. The fourth Friday came with almost the exact same text. "Mental health day. Can you call my boss?" I called, but that afternoon, while I was bored at work and scrolling through Instagram, I saw his story. A brunch table, mimosas, bright sunlight, his best friend across from him, grinning like neither of them had a responsibility in the world. Caption, "Friday fuel." Location tagged. I stared at it for a long time, then clicked backward through his saved stories. The week before, a rooftop bar, cocktail in hand, posted at 3 p.m. on a Friday. The week before that, a spa selfie, face mask on, champagne nearby. Caption, "Self-care Fridays hit different." And before that, brunch again. Different restaurant, same pattern. Eggs Benedict, Bloody Mary, sunglasses, laughter. Every mental health day I had called in for him had become a day out. Not rest, not recovery, not anxiety so bad he couldn't speak to his own manager. Brunch, bars, spa packages. And I had been the voice on the phone making it possible. That night, I didn't confront him. I went to his apartment, and he was on the couch watching Netflix like nothing had happened. He looked up and smiled. "Thanks for covering for me today, babe. I really needed it." I said, "No problem." Then I went home and started screenshotting. Every story, every timestamp, every location tag. Not because I had a plan, because my gut told me one clear thing. Keep receipts. The fifth Friday came at 8:52 a.m. His text popped up. "Can you call? Taking a mental health day. My anxiety is really bad this morning." I stared at it for almost 2 full minutes, feeling that strange little split inside me between the woman who wanted to keep the peace and the woman who was tired of being turned into an accessory to someone else's lies. Then I typed, "I think you should call yourself this time." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Are you serious right now?" "Yes, if you're not feeling well, you should tell your boss directly. It'll sound more genuine." "I asked you to do one thing. Why are you making this difficult?" "I called 4 times. I think it's reasonable for you to handle it yourself now." Then my phone rang. Not his boss. Him. The second I answered, I heard the anger in his breathing. "You don't support me," he snapped. "You know I struggle with anxiety, and you're refusing to help me with one phone call?" I stayed quiet for a second, then said, Your anxiety last Friday involved mimosas at the restaurant with the blue awning. Silence. What? And the Friday before that was a rooftop bar. Before that was a spa. Before that was brunch. His voice went cold. Are you stalking my social media now? It's public. You posted it. You tagged the locations. He scoffed. Those were after I took the morning to decompress. I went out later because I felt better. You asked me to tell your boss you had a migraine at 9 in the morning. By 1, you were doing tequila shots. They were margaritas. That is not the point. It is exactly the point, I said. You've been using me to lie to your employer so you can go party on Fridays. That stops today. His voice dropped lower, meaner. You're being controlling. No, I'm being honest. You don't understand mental health. I take mental health seriously, I said. That's why it bothers me that you're using it as a cover story for bottomless brunch. He hung up on me, and he did not call his boss that Friday. He simply didn't show up. For the next 3 days, he acted like I had betrayed him. No texts, no calls, nothing. That kind of silence is strange when you're in a relationship because it is never truly empty. It has a temperature. It has a message. And his silence said exactly this. You disappointed me. At first, I thought maybe he was embarrassed. Maybe he needed time to calm down and come back with something that sounded like accountability. I was wrong. Sunday night, my phone lit up. We need to talk. Come over. Not can we talk, not I'm sorry, just a summons. I drove over anyway, because even when your instincts are screaming, closure can still pull you by the wrist. He was sitting at his kitchen table when I walked in, arms crossed, posture rigid, like someone who had rehearsed being the wronged party in the mirror. He didn't offer me a drink, didn't ask how I was. He launched straight in. First of all, he said, you violated my trust. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because the audacity hit me so fast my brain didn't know what else to do. I violated your trust? Yes. By looking at your public Instagram? That's not the point. It literally is the point. No, he snapped. The point is, you were collecting evidence against me like some psycho. That word didn't hurt me as much as it revealed him. In his version, he wasn't the boyfriend who asked his girlfriend to repeatedly lie to his employer. He was the victim of a girlfriend who noticed too much. I sat down slowly. Okay, what else? He blinked, clearly expecting me to fight harder. Then he kept going. Second, you weaponized mental health. That one almost impressed me. Not because it was true, but because of how confidently he said it. You questioned my anxiety. No, I said. I questioned why your anxiety keeps disappearing around brunch cocktails. His jaw tightened. You don't get to decide what healing looks like. Tequila? Margaritas. Still alcohol. That's unbelievably dismissive. No, I said. What's dismissive is using real mental health struggles as a shield for manipulation. His expression hardened. Then he dropped his final argument like it was supposed to end the conversation. My best friend agrees with me. Of course he did. His best friend was the same guy smiling across from him in at least 3 of those Friday stories. His character witness was also his brunch accomplice. I folded my hands in my lap and looked at him. Are you planning to keep doing this? He leaned back. I shouldn't have to justify how I manage my well-being. That's not what I asked. You're being controlling. No, I'm asking if you plan to keep asking me to lie to your employer. He gave me a cold little smile, and for the first time, I saw what I had been trying not to see. Not guilt, not shame. Entitlement. Like my compliance had quietly become part of our relationship contract. Like saying no had broken some invisible promise. If you loved me, he said, you'd support me. That sentence settled between us like something rotten, because support and obedience are not the same thing. And suddenly I realized he genuinely believed they were. I stood up, and maybe we're not compatible. He looked startled, not heartbroken. Startled. Like I had stepped off script. You're seriously ending this over one misunderstanding? One misunderstanding? I repeated. You had me lie to your employer 5 times. You're exaggerating. I have screenshots. God, you're obsessed. And there it was. The clean emotional pivot people make when facts corner them. Attack motive, attack tone, attack delivery. Anything except the truth itself. I looked at him for a long moment, then walked out. We didn't officially break up that night, but emotionally, something had already ended. I just didn't realize how much worse things were about to get. Because Monday morning, his job situation exploded. And for the record, I did not contact his employer. I didn't email HR. I didn't send screenshots. I didn't tip anyone off. I considered it for maybe 5 angry seconds, then decided I wanted no part of his mess. But reality didn't need my help. He had made one very stupid mistake. He kept posting publicly. One of his co-workers followed him on Instagram, a woman on his team, someone who had apparently been quietly covering his workload every Friday for weeks. Every time he called out, she inherited his scheduled interviews, candidate files, unanswered emails, and whatever deadlines he had conveniently abandoned. She tolerated it until she saw the brunch stories. Imagine eating a sad desk lunch while carrying someone else's responsibilities, then opening Instagram and seeing that same coworker raising a mimosa under perfect sunlight with a caption about self-care. She didn't go nuclear. She went to their team lead, showed the timestamps, showed the stories, and let the facts speak. The team lead escalated it to HR. By Monday morning, he was called into a meeting with HR and his direct manager. He tried the anxiety explanation. HR asked for documentation, therapist records, a doctor's note, formal accommodation requests, anything. He had nothing, because there was nothing. He had been using mental health language, not a documented condition. By Monday afternoon, my phone rang. He was crying. They put me on a performance improvement plan. I sat in silence. 30 days, he said shakily. Any unexcused absence and I'm done. What happened? I asked. You know what happened? No, I said. I actually don't. Because of you. A dry laugh caught in my throat. Me? You made me feel guilty. You pushed this. Your coworker saw your public Instagram. If you hadn't gotten weird about it, I would have been more careful posting. For a second, I said nothing, because that sentence was astonishing. Not I should stop lying. Not I messed up. Not I need help. His takeaway was that he should have hidden it better. That was when something inside me went completely still. Some people hear consequences and become reflective. Others hear consequences and become sneakier. And I suddenly understood which kind of person he was. That should have been the end of it. A painful breakup. A professional consequence. A man dealing with the result of his own choices. But people who believe consequences happen to them, not because of them, rarely let the story end cleanly. About a week later, he texted me. Just so you know, I'm fighting this. I read it and didn't answer. A minute later, my friend says I have a strong case for mental health discrimination. Still nothing. Then, you're going to feel really stupid when I win. I left him on red because by then I understood something important. Not every accusation deserves a defense. While he was busy constructing himself as the victim, the rest of his life started unraveling without me touching a single thread. The first crack appeared inside the circle that had helped enable him. His best friend, the brunch companion and self-appointed expert who had apparently declared me toxic, began backing away the second things became inconvenient. Being someone's accomplice feels harmless when the stakes are cocktails and captions. It feels very different when the words HR investigation enter the room. Apparently, my ex told his friend he might need him to confirm that the Fridays were legitimate mental health days if he filed a complaint. Suddenly, loyalty developed conditions. His friend wanted no involvement, no professional risk, no interviews, no documentation. He had been comfortable helping with deception, just not being named inside the consequences. That friendship deteriorated fast. I know because my ex sent me a massive unsolicited text at nearly midnight, paragraph after paragraph about how everyone in his life was abandoning him. His coworker was evil. His manager was unfair. HR was retaliatory. His best friend was disloyal. I was cruel. The pattern was obvious by then. Every consequence needed a villain because accountability was never going to be him. Then his mother got involved. I didn't answer her first call. Then came the voicemail. Hi, Claire. I know my son isn't perfect, but he told me you refused to help him when he was struggling, and now he could lose his job. A real partner supports the person they love, even when it's inconvenient. I replayed the message twice, trying to understand the confidence behind it. The assumption that refusing to lie was emotional abandonment. The framing was almost impressive, like I hadn't withdrawn from enabling fraud, like I had abandoned someone on a battlefield. I saved the voicemail and didn't respond. That should have been the end of her involvement. It wasn't. She called his company, asked for HR, introduced herself as his mother, and reportedly told them her son was being discriminated against for a mental health condition and that legal action was being considered. HR documented the call and brought him in again. From what I later heard, the conversation was brutally simple. Did you authorize your mother to contact us? No. Any further third-party interference in internal HR matters may be documented as harassment. Imagine already being on a performance improvement plan, then having your mother accidentally escalate your professional humiliation. He apparently called her afterward and screamed. She believed she had helped, which told me almost everything about the emotional ecosystem that created him. Meanwhile, the PIP kept running. All he had to do was show up, do the work, avoid drama, and provide documentation if he needed time off. 30 days of basic adult competence. For about 2 weeks, he managed it. He arrived at work, did his tasks, stopped taking suspicious Fridays off. On paper, it looked like maybe the scare had worked. But pressure does not magically create character. It reveals it. His attitude deteriorated fast. He became resentful, passive-aggressive in meetings, sharp with coworkers, especially the woman who had flagged the Instagram stories. He treated her like she had personally ruined his life instead of simply refusing to keep carrying his workload. Other team members noticed. Complaints began quietly accumulating. Through all of this, he still texted me occasionally. Never apologies, only updates that sounded like legal briefs written by someone allergic to responsibility. HR is targeting me. That coworker is obsessed. This whole company is toxic. I ignored all of it. Once you understand someone's script, every message sounds like the same sentence wearing a different outfit. Then week 3 happened. He actually got sick, a real cold. Congestion, fever, the kind of thing that would normally be completely unremarkable. Except the PIP required documentation for absences. A doctor's note. He called out anyway, without documentation, then argued when HR flagged it. He said requiring proof for a cold was excessive. HR reminded him he had signed the terms. By the following Monday, they terminated him. Official reason: failure to meet performance improvement requirements combined with behavioral concerns. He went through badge surrender, awkward HR paperwork, a security escort, and the kind of professional humiliation no one forgets. That evening, my phone lit up with his name. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. His voice was raw. I lost my job. I closed my eyes, not from satisfaction, just exhaustion. I'm sorry that happened. Are you? The accusation came instantly, like grief had skipped every stage and sprinted straight to blame. Yes, I said carefully. Losing a job is awful. You started this. There it was. Predictable. Immediate. If you had just made the call that 5th Friday, none of this would have happened. Even then, unemployed and professionally humiliated, he still believed the real betrayal was me refusing to lie. I took a breath and said quietly, if you had just gone to work, none of this would have happened either. Silence. Then he hung up. 6 weeks after he got fired, I assumed the whole thing had finally burned itself out. Not because he had accepted responsibility, but because eventually, even the most dramatic collapse runs out of oxygen. I was wrong. Some people don't process consequences. They reorganize themselves around resentment. By then, my life had become noticeably quieter. No chaotic morning texts. No emotional negotiations disguised as relationship conversations. No calls demanding proof of loyalty. I went to work, came home, cooked smaller dinners, and watched whatever I wanted without someone criticizing my choices from the couch. In the silence, I started realizing how exhausting that relationship had been. That is the dangerous thing about gradual dysfunction. You normalize it while you are inside it. Only distance shows you how abnormal it was. Then a mutual acquaintance messaged me. Hey, weird question. Did your ex actually file legal action? That was how I found out he had consulted an employment lawyer. Apparently, he had fully committed to the mental health discrimination narrative. The lawyer asked simple questions. Did he have a documented diagnosis? No. Had he formally requested workplace accommodation? No. Had he submitted medical documentation during the PIP process? No. Then came the question that ended the fantasy. So your employer disciplined you after repeated suspicious absences, while social media showed you drinking at brunch during those same absences? The lawyer declined representation. Reality, unlike emotional manipulation, requires evidence. That should have humbled him. Instead, it gave him another villain. Now the lawyer was unfair too. By then, his support system was collapsing in layers. His best friend, the brunch co-pilot, had fully disappeared. My ex needed rent money, around $800. His friend refused. That argument ended their friendship. From what I heard, my ex treated the refusal like betrayal. His friend responded with something brutally simple. I told you months ago to stop posting your fake sick days online. That detail stopped me cold. Someone close to him had already warned him. Before me. Before HR. Before consequences. He had simply ignored every exit ramp available. This was not a good person making one bad decision under stress. This was a long-standing pattern. Then his mother resurfaced with a dramatic Facebook post about how corporate America punishes people for prioritizing mental wellness and how her son had been treated unfairly. One of his former coworkers apparently saw it and commented, "He called in sick to go to brunch 5 times. That isn't wellness." The comment was deleted, but not before screenshots circulated. Because of course they did. That was when I understood something unsettling. He hadn't just built excuses. He came from an environment where excuses were reinforced, where accountability was framed as cruelty, where consequences were always someone else's fault. Then his sister reached out. We had met maybe twice, briefly. Holiday-adjacent small talk, nothing meaningful. Her DM said, "Hey, I know this is weird, but I just wanted to say I don't blame you for any of this." I stared at it for a long time. Then she sent another message. "He's been like this since high school." That sentence hit differently than anything else because suddenly the story stretched backward. This wasn't new behavior. This was established behavior wearing adult clothes. She told me he had lost a summer job at 16 for almost the exact same reason. Calling out, lying, getting caught, blaming others. No one in the family had been surprised by this collapse. Not really. That might have been the saddest part. It meant nobody had successfully interrupted the pattern. They had just adapted around it. Then something even stranger happened. I ran into the coworker at a coffee shop, completely by accident. I was waiting for my drink when a woman approached me cautiously. "Claire?" I looked up confused. She introduced herself. She worked with my ex. She was the coworker who had flagged the Instagram stories. For a split second, I braced for confrontation. Instead, she looked awkward, tired. "I wanted to tell you I didn't report him to be cruel," she said. "You don't have to explain." But she did anyway, and I understood why. Decent people often feel guilty for enforcing boundaries against manipulative ones. She told me she had been covering his work almost every Friday for 2 months. Candidate files, emails, interview scheduling, her own work plus his, all while he posted brunch photos. Eventually, she snapped. I told her she did the right thing. Then she hesitated. "He told everyone you were the one who contacted HR." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly him. Of course I was the villain in his version. He needed one. If accountability is unbearable, guilt has to be outsourced. Me, the coworker, HR, his manager, his friend, his lawyer, reality itself. Anyone except the person making the choices. And standing there with coffee in my hand, hearing confirmation from someone outside the emotional wreckage, something finally clicked into place. The worst part wasn't only what he did. It was how long I had helped make it easier. I didn't blame myself for everything. He made his choices. He lied, he manipulated, he refused accountability at every possible turn. That was his. But I had participated in the early version of the pattern, and being honest about that mattered. Manipulation rarely begins with outrageous demands. If someone asked you on date 3 to commit fraud for them, you would leave. It starts smaller. A favor. A bad day. A request framed as vulnerability. Then another. Then another. Before you realize it, the abnormal has quietly become routine. That was the part I had to sit with. Not guilt. Clarity. A few weeks later, one of my coworkers asked if I wanted to grab drinks after work. I almost said no automatically. Then I realized something strange. For months, I had organized part of my emotional life around anticipating someone else's instability. Would he need something? Would there be drama? Would tonight become another exhausting negotiation disguised as love? Without that background noise, peace felt unfamiliar. So I said yes. That night, sitting in a loud restaurant with coworkers complaining about office politics and overpriced appetizers, I realized I hadn't checked my phone anxiously once. No dread, no incoming crisis, no emotional cleanup duty. Just normal life. And it felt better than revenge ever could. But my ex still wasn't done trying to pull me back into his story. About a week later, he texted me. I was denied unemployment. I didn't respond. Another message came. Termination for cause. Apparently that matters. Then, happy now? That question irritated me more than I expected, because it revealed the same distorted framework all over again. Like his suffering existed in relation to me. Like this was some revenge arc I had engineered. It wasn't. I finally replied, I never wanted you to lose your job. He answered immediately, that's funny, because everything changed when you stopped supporting me. Months later, after career damage, broken friendships, legal embarrassment, and family fallout, he still had the same thesis. The Fifth Friday phone call was the original sin. I typed, deleted, then sent. Everything changed when you kept lying and expected everyone else to help maintain it. He replied, you think you're perfect? That was another familiar move. When someone can't defend their own actions, they lower the standard from accountability to perfection, as if only flawless people are allowed to object to deception. I didn't engage. He kept sending paragraphs about stress, pressure, feeling unsupported, and how hard his life had become. Buried inside all of it was the loudest absence. Not one apology. Not one sentence of ownership. That was when I blocked him. Not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly. Because some conversations stop being conversations. They become loops, and loops do not need participation. A few days later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that he was telling people I had destroyed his life. That phrase would have hurt me once. Instead, it clarified everything. Destroying someone's life implies force, intent, action. All I had done was refuse to keep lying. The structure collapsed because the structure depended on deception. That isn't destruction. That's gravity. Then, while looking through old messages for something unrelated, I found an early text thread from our first months together. Back when things still felt light, I saw small requests I had ignored at the time. Can you tell my friend I'm on the way? I don't want to deal with him. Can you say I had car trouble? Can you just cover for me? Nothing catastrophic, but enough to show the pattern had always existed. Tiny boundary tests. And I had kept passing them, not because I was weak, but because I thought being accommodating made me loving. That distinction matters. Manipulative people do not always begin by taking huge bites. Sometimes they train you to normalize incremental compromise until your own discomfort starts feeling unreasonable. Reading those messages, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Because once you see the full shape of something, you stop romanticizing isolated good moments. Then, one Friday morning, months after everything ended, my phone buzzed while I was getting ready for work. For half a second, my stomach dropped. Pure reflex. Old conditioning. I looked at the screen. Spam call. And I laughed. That was when I knew healing was real. Not because I never thought about him, but because thinking about him no longer carried weight. Just perspective. Then one final piece of the story arrived from the person I least expected. His mother. I assumed I would never hear from her again. And honestly, I preferred it that way. Some people don't enter your life directly. They arrive as extensions of someone else's dysfunction. One Sunday afternoon, I got a voicemail. Different tone this time. She sounded like someone who had spent weeks living with consequences she could no longer explain away. No accusation, no righteous indignation, just hesitation. Claire, hi. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. That alone made me pause. This was not the same woman who had once lectured me about what a real partner should do. Her voice sounded older, smaller, tired. I almost deleted it. Instead, I listened. I wanted to apologize. I sat down. Not because I forgave her instantly, but because I genuinely hadn't expected that sentence. She said she had believed her son completely, that he had described me as cold, unsupportive, dismissive of his mental health, that he made it sound like I abandoned him during a crisis. As his mother, she reacted emotionally, defensively, predictably. Then she paused and said something that stayed with me. After everything happened, certain details stopped making sense. That sentence told me reality had finally started forcing its way through the story he had given her. She explained that after he lost his job, he moved back home temporarily. Living with him as an adult had been, in her words, clarifying. Little things at first. Excuses, half-truths, stories that changed depending on who asked. Job applications he claimed to send that somehow never existed. Appointments he forgot. Bills he thought had been paid. Promises constantly deferred. Nothing huge in isolation, but enough repetition to form a pattern. And patterns are harder to ignore when they are unfolding in your kitchen. Then she said, I think I've spent a long time confusing protecting him with helping him. That landed harder than I expected, because in one sentence she named the entire emotional architecture of the situation. Enabling disguised as love, intervention framed as betrayal, comfort prioritized over accountability. I didn't say much, mostly listened. Then she told me this wasn't new. The summer job, missed obligations, borrowed money never repaid, conflicts with teachers, conflicts with bosses, falling outs with friends, different settings, same emotional script. At some point I asked quietly, then why defend him so aggressively? There was a long pause. Then she said, because admitting the truth would mean admitting I helped create some of it. That was the most honest thing anyone in that family had said. We ended the call politely. No dramatic reconciliation, no friendship, just closure. Real closure. After I hung up, I sat there thinking about how many destructive patterns survive because the people around them mistake rescue for love. That was the final lesson for me. Not about him, about boundaries. For a long time, I thought being a good partner meant proving I was supportive, flexible, understanding, loyal. But loyalty without boundaries becomes self-erasure. Support without honesty becomes enabling. Love without accountability becomes permission. When someone consistently asks you to compromise your integrity for their comfort, that isn't intimacy. That's training. And once I saw that clearly, I couldn't unsee it. Life after that became beautifully boring, and I mean that as the highest compliment. Work, groceries, laundry, friends, terrible TV without emotional negotiations. Normal life, stable life. My grocery bill dropped by nearly $200 a month, which remains the least romantic but most measurable sign of personal recovery. A coworker asked me recently whether I was dating again. I told her not seriously. She laughed and asked if I had a new deal breaker. I said yes. She asked what? Without even thinking, I answered, anyone who asked me to call their boss. She laughed. I laughed too. But I wasn't joking. Because sometimes the thing that breaks your heart doesn't look dramatic while it's happening. Sometimes it looks like a harmless favor, a small compromise, a single uncomfortable phone call. And the relationship didn't end because I stopped loving him. It ended because I finally stopped helping him lie.